One man. From an empty grassland. Nobody cared. His father Yasujii was a minor chieftain with modest power and a long list of enemies. When Temujin was 9 years old, his father was poisoned at a Tatar feast. The clan abandoned the family within days. On the steppe, a widow with young children was a liability and not a responsibility. The followers left. The allies disappeared. And Temujin found himself alone on the frozen steppe with nothing. No food, no protection. No future that anyone could see. What followed were years of survival so harsh they would have destroyed most people completely. Temujin and his brothers hunted small animals, gathered roots and berries, ate whatever the unforgiving land offered. He was captured by enemies and held prisoner with a wooden collar around his neck, the mark of a slave. He escaped in darkness, moving alone through enemy territory with nothing but his will to survive. He found shelter. He returned to his family. And the years of hunger and captivity and abandonment did not break him. They created something that privilege never could. A bone-deep understanding of powerlessness. And a cold, patient, ferocious determination to never be powerless again. By his mid-teens, Temujin began to rebuild. He sought out his father's old ally Togrul, chief of the Karaite tribe, one of the most powerful men on the steppe. He brought a gift, a sable fur coat of considerable value. He was 19 years old and he was already negotiating. Togrul accepted the alliance, and the boy who had grown up surviving on small game in the snow began the long ascent towards something no one on the steppe had ever imagined possible. He started with nothing, a handful of loyal followers. No territory, no title, no army, but something more dangerous than all of those things. A vision of what the Mongols could become if someone had the will to build it. He reorganized his growing force into disciplined units of 10, 100, 1,000. Promotion based on merit alone. Not birth, not bloodline, ability and proven loyalty. He broke the old tribal hierarchies and replaced them with loyalty to him alone. Warriors from the lowest families rose to command thousands. Men of noble birth who proved unreliable were reduced. On a steppe built entirely on inherited status, this was genuinely revolutionary. His greatest rival was his own blood brother Jamuga, brilliant and charismatic, representing everything the old order stood for. They had been genuinely close once, sworn the oaths of brotherhood the steppe considered sacred. But their visions were incompatible. Their war lasted years. Temujin lost battles. He retreated. He rebuilt. Every time he came back stronger because he learned from defeat in ways his enemies never managed. The Tatars who had poisoned his father were crushed. The Merkits destroyed. The Naimans defeated. One by one, the powers of the steppe were absorbed until nothing remained to oppose him. In 1206, on the banks of the Onan River, Temujin called the greatest gathering of Mongolian clans in history. Thousands of warriors assembled on the open steppe. The great white banner was raised, and the assembled leaders gave him a new name, Gengis Khan, Universal Ruler. For the first time in history, the Mongols were one nation, one army, one direction. And the world, which had not been paying sufficient attention, was about to understand what that meant. The first target was the Xia kingdom to the south. They expected raiders. They got something entirely different. Genghis Khan studied his enemies before he struck them. He absorbed captured Chinese engineers and siege experts into his force. He turned the knowledge of conquered people against the next enemy. His signature weapon was the feigned retreat. Engage, appear to flee, let the enemy break formation chasing what looked like a rout, then close from both sides and destroy the overextended force. Battle after battle ended the same way. By 1215, the Mongol banner flew over Zhongdu, the capital of northern China. The city the world would one day call Beijing. The first great empire had fallen. The conquest of China took decades. The Jin dynasty in the north, the Song dynasty in the south. Any one of them should have been a generation-long war. The Mongols treated them like stepping stones. They breached the Great Wall. They deployed siege engines of captured Chinese design against Chinese cities. Scholars were spared and employed. Engineers were absorbed and redirected. Former enemies became soldiers in the Mongol ranks. The empire was not merely conquering China. It was absorbing China, becoming stronger with every city it consumed. The longest siege, against the fortress city of Xiangyang, lasted 5 full years. 5 years of continuous naval and land operations. At the end of it, the Song dynasty fell completely, and China was unified under Mongol rule for the first time in its history. In 1218, a Mongol trade caravan arrived at the city of Otrar in the Khwarezmian Empire, the most powerful Islamic state in the world. The governor had the merchants arrested and executed. When Genghis Khan sent ambassadors demanding justice, the Shah had the lead ambassador killed and the others returned mutilated. Whether the Shah understood what he had done is debated by historians. What followed is not. Genghis Khan assembled the largest army he had ever commanded and split it into multiple columns, striking different cities simultaneously from different directions. Bokhara, Samarkand, Urgench, the crown jewels of Islamic civilization. Cities that had been centers of science, literature, mathematics, and accumulated human knowledge for centuries. They fell one by one. The great libraries burned. The irrigation systems built over thousands of years were deliberately destroyed. The Shah fled his own empire, pursued by a Mongol force specifically assigned to hunt him alone. He died on a small island in the Caspian Sea, abandoned and broken. In 2 years, the most powerful Islamic empire of the age had ceased to exist. What had been the most advanced civilization on Earth was reduced to ruins and silence. The damage to the accumulated intellectual heritage of humanity was simply incalculable. In the summer of 1227, in the mountains of northwestern China, Genghis Khan fell ill. He was 65 years old. He continued issuing commands from his bed. He named his successor. He gave final instructions to his sons and generals. He delivered his last orders in the same quiet, authoritative voice that had commanded armies for 4 decades. And then he was gone. The news spread through the camp in complete silence. 100,000 warriors lowered their heads at the same moment. He was buried in secret in the mountains of Mongolia. No marker, no monument. He wanted to belong to the steppe and nothing else. To this day, his grave has never been found. His son Ogidi took the throne and the empire did not slow down. It accelerated. Korea fell. The Jin dynasty was finally destroyed in 1234. A permanent capital was built at Karakoram where merchants from China, Persia, Russia, and Europe traded side by side. and the great General Subutai began planning the invasion of Europe. He spent years studying Russian and European military systems through reconnaissance and intelligence. In the winter of 1237, the army crossed the frozen Volga River into Russia. The frozen rivers became highways for cavalry. Ryazan fell, Vladimir fell, Moscow fell. The Russian princes who refused to unite were destroyed one by one in rapid succession. In the spring of 1241, 3 Mongol armies crossed into Europe simultaneously from 3 different directions on a coordinated timetable that had no precedent in the history of warfare. At the Battle of Legnica, the finest heavy cavalry in Central Europe was destroyed in a single afternoon. At the Battle of Mohi, the entire Hungarian army was encircled and annihilated. Mongol riders reached the outskirts of Vienna. They reached the Adriatic coast. Europe lay completely open, and there was nothing left capable of stopping them. And then Genghis Khan died in Mongolia. The entire army turned around and marched east. Europe was saved not by its armies or its prayers, but by the death of a man 4,000 miles away. Europe never saw the Mongols again. Kublai Khan was the most complex of Genghis Khan's grandsons. He conquered China and fell genuinely in love with it. He declared himself emperor and founded the Yuan dynasty. He built the court at Kanbalik, the city that would become Beijing, into the most cosmopolitan place on earth. When Marco Polo arrived, he witnessed cities of 1 million people, paper money that people actually used, a postal system crossing an entire continent, organized welfare for the poor. He went home and wrote a book that Europe refused to believe was real. Kublai sent invasion fleets to Japan twice. Both times typhoons destroyed them. The Japanese called it the divine wind, the kamikaze. The empire that had never been stopped had been stopped by the weather. The Mongol peace that followed conquest created a connected world without precedent. Merchants traveled from Beijing to Venice under Mongol protection. The Silk Road became a highway of civilization carrying goods and ideas across the entire width of Asia. But the same roads carried something else. In 1346, the Mongol army besieging the port of Kaffa loaded diseased material into catapults and fired it over the walls. Italian merchants fled by ship. By 1347, the Black Death had arrived in Europe. Within 6 years, 1/3 of the entire European population was dead. The Mongol Empire had accidentally set in motion the catastrophe that ended the medieval world and created the conditions for the modern one. The empire did not fall at once. It eroded. The 4 khanates began fighting each other. In China, weak leadership and rising resentment produced the Red Turban Rebellion. Zhu Yuanzhang, born into poverty with nothing, rose through the chaos and marched on the Mongol capital. In 1368, the last Yuan emperor fled north across the Gobi Desert back to the steppe his ancestors had come from. In Russia, the Golden Horde fragmented into smaller successor states. At the Battle of Kulikovo in 1380, Russian forces defeated a Mongol army in open battle for the first time. One by one, the pieces of the greatest empire in human history fell away. The Mongols returned to the steppe. The same grass, the same sky, the same wind, as if the empire had only been a dream. But it was not a dream. 16 million men alive today carry the direct genetic legacy of Genghis Khan. The borders of Russia, China, Iran, Iraq, and Poland were all shaped by the Mongol conquests. The Black Death, the empire unleashed, ended feudalism and triggered the Renaissance. The trade routes it built are being rebuilt today under a different name along the same ancient paths. In Mongolia, the people still ride on the same open steppe under the same eternal blue sky. A massive steel statue of Genghis Khan stands outside the capital, the largest equestrian statue on earth, staring east across the grassland he was born on. 800 years later, the steppe is still there. The wind still blows, and the world he made is still the world we live in. What the Mongol Empire teaches us, when you strip away the scale and the violence and the impossible statistics, is something fundamental about human organization. The Mongols did not win because they were larger. Every civilization they conquered had larger populations. They did not win because they had better technology at the start. Every civilization they conquered had more sophisticated cities and weapons and infrastructure. They won because of how they thought. Speed over mass, coordination over numbers, adaptability over tradition. The feigned retreat that destroyed army after army across 30 years of campaign was not complicated. It was a simple trap. But it worked because the enemy always made the same assumption, that a retreating force was a beaten force, and the Mongols had trained for years to exploit that assumption perfectly every single time. The decimal military system was not complicated either, but it created a chain of command that moved orders faster and more reliably than any army on Earth. The merit system was not complicated, but it meant the Mongol army always had its most capable people in positions of command rather than its most well-born. Each of these things was individually simple. Together, they created something unstoppable. The generals Genghis Khan produced deserve to be remembered alongside any commanders in history. Subutai was perhaps the greatest operational military mind the world has ever seen. He conducted more campaigns across more terrain against more different enemies with higher success rates than any commander before or since. He personally directed the destruction of the Jin dynasty in China, the campaign through Russia, and the invasion of Europe. He was still planning new campaigns in his 70s. Mughal held northern China for years with limited forces through pure operational brilliance. Ji pursued Shah Muhammad across the full width of the Khwarezmian Empire and then continued on a reconnaissance raid through Persia, Azerbaijan, and the Caucasus that covered thousands of miles and delivered intelligence that shaped the strategy of the next decade. These were not lucky men. They were the product of a system that found the most capable warriors and gave them the authority and resources to operate at the highest level. The administrative system of the Mongol Empire was in many ways as impressive as the military one. The Yam Postal Relay Network placed stations at regular intervals across all major routes, each maintaining fresh horses. A message could travel from one end of the empire to the other in days rather than months. This information speed gave Mongol leadership an advantage in decision-making that their enemies could not match or counter. The census systems they developed to manage conquered populations were more thorough than anything the civilizations they conquered had used for themselves. The religious tolerance that was official Mongol policy across the empire allowed Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and practitioners of traditional Mongolian shamanism to coexist under a single administration, not out of idealism, out of the practical recognition that imposing religion on conquered people created resistance, and resistance was inefficient. The story of the Mongol Empire is ultimately the story of what is possible when a single human being of extraordinary capability starts from nothing and refuses to stop. Temujin had no advantages. No Bealt, no power, no city walls, no standing army, no political connections that survived his father's death. He had the steppe and what the steppe had made of him. A mind that absorbed every experience and extracted every possible lesson from it. A patience that could wait years for the right moment. A ruthlessness that never hesitated when the moment arrived. And a vision of something that had never existed that he made real through 40 years of continuous effort. The world he built outlasted him in ways he could not have anticipated. His consequences are still unfolding. 8 centuries have passed. His grave is still undiscovered. His genetic legacy lives in tens of millions of people. The borders he drew or erased are still visible on modern maps. The catastrophe he accidentally unleashed changed the social structure of an entire continent. The roads he built and protected are being rebuilt by the most powerful nation in the world. The blue sky of Mongolia still looks the same as it did when he was a child staring up at it from the banks of the Onon River. And the steppe still stretches in every direction without end, as if it is still waiting for someone to look at it and see not emptiness but possibility. There is one final thing worth understanding. The Mongol Empire did not just change the world that existed when it rose. It created the conditions for the world that came after. The Renaissance that transformed European civilization grew partly from the transmission of knowledge that the Mongol period enabled, ideas and texts and technologies moving from east to west through routes the Mongols had opened and maintained. The centralized Russian state that would eventually become a superpower was shaped in its political DNA by 2 centuries spent inside the Mongol system. The genetic inheritance of 16 million living men is a biological fact that no subsequent history can alter. The Black Death that killed a third of Europe reset the social order of an entire civilization and created the labor shortage that began the slow death of feudalism. Each of these consequences was vast. Together they amount to something almost impossible to measure. The Mongol Empire was the hinge on which the medieval world turned into the modern one. And it was built by one man, born with nothing, on a grassland at the edge of everything, who decided that the horizon was not a limit. It was a direction,